In this video, we're going to talk about what your first Harley-Davidson should be. Let's check it out. What's going on, YouTube? BK Low is back in the building. And I recently had a subscriber by the name of John write into me on Instagram and asked me a question, which is a question that I've gotten actually fairly frequently over the years. And basically, this is John's situation. So he knows that he eventually wants to ride a Dyna, right? That's his end goal in terms of riding, but he hasn't started riding yet. And he knows that he wants a Harley-Davidson, and he's kind of thinking about what his first bike should be in the realm of Harley-Davidsons. His concern is he doesn't want to start off with a Sportster, grow out of it really quickly, and then drop the money on a Dyna. He'd rather not spend the money if he doesn't need to, but at the same time, he doesn't want to, be a new rider and jump straight onto a Dyna and feel kind of overwhelmed with the weight of the bike and the power. So he's kind of like in the crossroads of a decision of which way to go. So first off, John, thanks a lot for the question. We appreciate it. I think it's a question that a lot of new riders also have, so definitely warrants making a video. Oh man, does this bike sound good. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. Here's my story, right? So in terms of this question, I was very, very fortunate in regards to a first bike because my dad, we've always had a Sportster 883 in my family, right? That's the bike that was around when I was growing up. My dad rode that bike. He eventually got a Softail Heritage, so by the time I was ready to start learning to ride, he had his Heritage, and then he gave me that Sportster, to learn to ride on. And, that was quote unquote, I guess, my first bike. I'm kind of hesitant to call it my first bike because it's like there was no papers in my name. I didn't actually buy it, so like that level of commitment maybe wasn't there. But it was the first bike that I was primarily riding and that I learned, that I kind of cut my teeth on, So it was a great, really good first bike. It only had 4 gears, but it went fast enough to manage the highway. The weight was light enough to be comfortable to get yourself out of any potential situations and low speed maneuvers. And it was just a really, really good bike to learn on. It was carbureted, so I got to experience like a carbureted bike and some of the things that come along with that. So I'm very fortunate to have learned on that bike. So now this kind of comes into John's situation. So I had gotten a lot of experience on that bike. I was very comfortable riding at this point through the lens of the Sportster. And it was time for me to buy my own bike. Now, my dad had found a really good deal from a friend of his on I believe it was a 2009 Road King, and it was a really good deal. And it was a cool looking bike. I figured, all right, let me give this one a chance. So I went to look at the bike. I sat on the bike, and I was immediately just like, no, it's just like it's way too big of a jump for me from the Sportster. And like I don't know. It was, I think at the end of the day, it was just the weight and the size that I just wasn't ready to make that jump. And also, it wasn't what I really wanted. I remember really wanting at that time either a street bob or a lowrider. That's what I kind of had my eye on. So I was almost kind of going to be just getting that bike because, hey, it's a really good deal. The weight and the size was kind of a turn off for me. I didn't feel as comfortable as I should have. So basically what happened then is you kind of know the story. I almost bought a street bob. I was close, and then the Lowrider S came out in 2016. Saw that bike, and that was it. Knew that's what I wanted. Bought the Lowrider S. The second I sat on that bike, it made total sense. It was a very, very easy transition from the time I put on the Sportster. I felt comfortable with the weight, comfortable with the power, and now here I am, present day, comfortable riding pretty much any Harley-Davidson. I could hop on a Bagger, I'm fine. I could hop on a Dyna, a Sportster, whatever it is, I'm good. I'm comfortable with any weight. So now to try to answer John's question a little bit, now that you've heard a little bit of my story with my first bike, right? So my situation's pretty unique, right? Most people don't just have a Sportster laying around that they could just learn on and not have to commit to buying it, right? So I don't know, I could see this, I could see John taking this in two different ways, right? What I will say is most people I know that own Dynas, it was not their first bike. I can't really think of many folks that I know that own Dynas where like that was it. They jumped on, they bought a Dyna and then rode off into the sunset. Most people I know, first Harley is usually a Sportster or maybe a Street 750, something a little bit smaller, right? Not just jumping straight on a Dyna. So option one here to go with would be, all right, you're gonna commit to learn on a Sportster. You know, it's a great bike to learn on, great Harley-Davidson to learn on. So you're committing to that. Find a Sportster out there that's reasonably priced. I'm talking like, you know, maybe $3,000, something like that. Tell yourself that you're not gonna get attached to it, so you're not gonna do a whole bunch of upgrades. You don't need to change the exhaust. Keep it as stock as it is as you're learning. And then when the time comes and you feel comfortable enough, go ahead, pull the trigger on a Dyna, and hopefully you will have had enough riding experience with the Sportster to do that. And that way you hadn't dumped a bunch of money in upgrades, you know, you kind of got the most out of it for what it was, and you're ready to get the bike that you actually wanted, which was the Dyna, and you know, you've dropped minimal money to make that happen, right? So that's option one if you want to go the route I did and you don't have the convenience of having someone own a Sportster that's going to lend it to you or whatever, right? Okay, option two is like, you know that you're going to eventually transition to a Dyna. You know that that's what you have your eyes on, right? I would argue that take your MSS course, find a buddy that has a spare bike that's a little bit smaller that you could take a couple rides on, maybe get comfortable with, you know. And then even if it doesn't feel like you're 100% comfortable, like even if the Dyna feels heavy or, you know, you just don't feel 100% confident, I would argue that practice in a lot, practice your low speed maneuvers, make sure you have some crash bars, and I would imagine that after a couple weeks, you're just gonna eventually adapt to the weight and the power of the bike, and it's gonna start to seem like normal, and then eventually that bike is just gonna feel like home to you. Now again, I don't know too many folks who have like gone that route with having a Dyna be their first bike, or having something bigger than a Dyna, like a bagger, be their first bike. And you know, I know a couple folks at this point, right, who have started with Sportsters, and at this point they've moved on to touring models, like street glides and road glides. So that's kind of seems to be the most natural progression in terms of riding Harleys. If you put in the time and you put in the practice, you know, I think it is possible to make the bike that you want be your first bike, as long as you're like committed to, you know, practicing and learning how to control it in the low speeds. Because I mean, it's the low speed maneuvers that are always going to get you, you know. That's where you got to really put in the work. But yeah, so you know, I shared with you guys my story of how I started my first bike, etc. I'd love to put it out there to you guys subscribing to the channel right now. You know, what did you guys start on? What was your transition? You know, is there anyone watching that did start on a Dyna or like a bagger or something as their first Harley? You know, what do you guys think? Because everyone's got a different story, everyone's got a different way that they've progressed. But John, I hope that helps answer your question a little bit. I know I didn't provide like a definite a definitive answer on this, because I don't really think that there is a definitive answer. I think there's just a lot of different routes you could go to eventually have yourself on the bike you want to be on. And yeah, it kind of just is what it is. But yeah, as always, thank you for watching. Thanks for writing in with questions like this. It's always cool to engage the rest of the community in these types of dilemmas. And yeah, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my little Long Island ride here, out here in Roslyn. As always, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there and stay low. And BK Low is out.